Across the United States, Democrats celebrate the election of a new president. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are heading to the White House.
I'll work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as those who did.
Ms. Harris, the senator from California, breaking through in her own right.
But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
The incumbent Donald Trump refuses to concede. His supporters remain steadfast in opposition. Tonight, our correspondents will bring you the latest.
I'm Ben Lewis reporting from Washington, D.C. How were the victory speeches received?
I'm Prue Luan in New York. Can Mr Biden heal a deeply fractured country?
And I'm Brett Mason in Canberra. What will a Biden administration mean for Australia?
This is SBS World News with Janice Petersen.
Good evening. Well, Joe Biden had called for patience when the excruciating ballot count spilled over several days. He had called his mission the battle for the soul of the nation. And today, the 77-year-old has called for the end of demonisation and time to heal a bitterly divided America. His running mate Kamala Harris, who has broken through with a number of her own firsts, summing it up by saying, "We did it." Our correspondents in the US will stay with us over the next hour with the latest developments and also to recap a momentous day. And it is continuing into the night. This is the White House in Washington, D.C. right now. And the US Capitol is where our chief international correspondent Ben Lewis joins us from tonight. So let's go to him first. Good evening, Ben. What was the key message coming from the President and Vice President-elect?
Janice, good evening. The key message was one of unity, but overall it was a pretty standard presidential speech. And after the last 4 years, many Americans would have been relieved to hear that. Donald Trump has not conceded in the election. He hasn't even telephoned his opponent, but that is largely irrelevant because in January, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. They came to celebrate, thousands waiting for the president-elect. It took several days of painstaking vote counting to get here. Waiting a few more hours, not a problem. A sprightly step for this 77-year-old, clearly enjoying the moment, promising to heal his nation.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. Who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States.
Joe Biden says now is an opportunity to defeat despair, to restore the soul of America, and to become, again, a beacon for the rest of the world.
We will lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. I've always believed we can define America in one word: possibilities.
Fittingly first, though,
please welcome the Vice President-elect of Kamala Harris.
a woman of firsts. First female vice president, first black vice president, first Asian vice president, first daughter of immigrants chosen to be vice president.
But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
For those here tonight, this is a chance for a fresh start.
So we voted somebody in who can bring us all back together. When Trump won, I was in my college dorm. I cried. A lot of my friends got their visas taken away and stuff, and today is just a sigh of relief.
I feel proud as an American. I feel like it's been a long journey to get here, and also as an Asian American, I'm proud for Kamala Harris.
This is the night Democrats have been dreaming of for almost 4 years. Donald Trump now joins an exclusive club, presidents who couldn't win re-election. And in Trump world, there's nothing worse than being considered a loser. No fireworks, just fairways for the current president. His earlier tweets far from conceding, instead declaring 71 million legal votes, the most ever for a sitting president. and repeating unsubstantiated claims of fraud.
Oh my God.
His star power, though, still evident for one bride and her wedding party.
Thank you, Mr. President. We love you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We love you.
Have a great life, right?
Yes.
Young and beautiful you. Would like to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you very much. Yes.
He received a very different reaction back in Washington, D.C. A lot of joy for Joe.
I'm feeling ecstatic. I'm really excited.
He can't get out of the White House soon enough. A lot of his policies attack me, you know, in every way, every one of my identities, being a proud Syrian American Muslim woman. And so the idea that now he's finally out of office after 4 years of having to deal with that and challenge through that and the anxiety of that is the biggest relief I can ever imagine.
Donald Trump's personal lawyer mocking Mr. Biden's win.
Come on, don't be ridiculous. Networks don't get to decide elections. Courts do.
As pundits mocked the Trump team for booking a press conference next to a sex shop outside a business called Four Seasons Landscaping, not the famous hotel chain. Legal challenges are expected to be filed on Monday, but the president-elect is holding out an olive branch.
For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance.
So Joe Biden there trying to reach across the divide, but that divide is still very much real. Democrats had been hoping this election result would see an enormous blue wave, a total repudiation of Trumpism, and that simply hasn't happened, with more than 71 million Americans still voting for Donald Trump. We saw some of them protesting on the streets today, but for the moment, for most people in America, it is a moment of celebration. And Janice, remarkable sight. Today we drove from Washington, D.C. All the way up to Delaware, coming out the suburbs of Washington. On every street corner, there were people holding signs, dancing, hugging each other and celebrating. A truly extraordinary sight.
Thank you so much. That's our Chief International Correspondent, Ben Lewis, joining us from Washington, D.C. Well, let's go now to correspondent Prue Lewan, who joins us from New York. Good evening, Prue. Now, this moment, of course, comes days after the polls close, but for Democrats, it's been a far longer wait.
It certainly has. A very good evening to you, Janice. Both men, of course, had said that this was the most important election of their lifetimes, and it certainly felt the same was true for all Americans. And yet, really, despite what we have just seen in Washington, nobody would have anticipated that those scenes of enthusiasm and relief and excitement were repeated right across America.
New York City, spontaneous joy. Outside Trump Tower. In Times Square, with cowbells, song, a fry pan, by all and any means possible, celebration.
We need a government of inclusion for the people and by the people, so this is beautiful.
So bye-bye, Mr. Trump. Hasta la vista, baby.
A solo enthusiast. A neighborhood dance party. And quiet, teary, overwhelming relief.
It's liberation. It's just joyous. People have felt this weight and a sense of we're divided, and we shouldn't be that way. And now there's a feeling that anything's possible.
In Philadelphia. Seattle. Las Vegas, Nevada. And Atlanta, Georgia. Fireworks exploding in this previously reliably red state. And in a television studio, a seasoned commentator overcome.
Well, it's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters.
The Biden embrace far from universal. Confrontation over the election result in Sacramento, California. A brawl on the street. Unhappiness too in Oregon.
Trump will still be my president.
A Stop the Steal rally in Michigan. and Trump supporters protesting in Washington state. But in Chicago, with celebrations outside its Trump Tower, Democrats revived and resolute.
There's a reason that people all over the world breathed a huge sigh of relief upon today's announcement. Make no mistake, America is back.
Rejection of Donald Trump perhaps most passionately expressed in his former hometown, New York Senator Chuck Schumer leading in song. Far more savage, the front page of the New York Post, the Murdoch Empire tabloid putting in the boot. Chuck Schumer had called Joe Biden as Democrats' celebrations began.
You hear that? He says thank you.
Cheers which extended into the night. As Joe Biden addressed the nation, Times Square gridlocked, the landmark from which American broadcasters ring in the new year. On this occasion, a new American era.
So why such enthusiasm? Is it really about Joe Biden? Well, to be frank, of course it's not entirely about him, not the kind of rock star performance that you saw today. You heard Ben saying that on every street corner in Washington, D.C., people are screaming and hollering, and it was exactly the same here in New York City today. A car would go past and everyone would go, woo! Just like that. Over and over and over again. So what's it about? Why is it that people were so celebratory today? Well, at least in this kind of town, New York City, there is a visceral contempt for President Trump, outgoing President Trump. It's not just about his policy. It's about this, what he does in terms of how he speaks to people, how he tweets about people. He has 88.8 million followers, and he says frequently that's the way he reaches Americans. So this is the point we've got to now. If you go on his Twitter feed right now, you'll see that most of his tweets are currently hidden, if you like, by Twitter because they're simply not telling the truth. Americans are profoundly patriotic people, and at least for Democrats, they had had enough.
Thank you so much. That's our reporter, Prue Luan, bringing us some of the colour and insights of a momentous day in American politics. And a little later in the bulletin, the counting continues. We break down the numbers and the electoral path the President-elect took to the White House. Back home, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison was among world leaders to congratulate the Biden team on their win and offer his thanks to President Donald Trump. Let's go to our chief political correspondent now, Brett Mason, who joins us from Parliament House in Canberra with more. Good evening, Brett. How is the government viewing this election result in light of our very close relations with the US?
Well, Janice, to be blunt, with relief. Despite the Prime Minister saying that Australians should be patient, he had confidence in the systems and institutions of the United States, there has been enormous anxiety, not only here in Canberra, but in other capitals around the world. And there does seem to have been a level of coordination, particularly among the Five Eyes alliance partners of the United States, those world leaders among the first to acknowledge Joe Biden as the President-elect. One door opens as another one closes.
I join with other nations' leaders around the world in congratulating President-elect Joe Biden, together with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. This is a profound time, not just for the United States, but for our partnership and the world more broadly. And I look forward to forging a great partnership.
Immediately extending a prime ministerial invitation for a presidential trip down under in 2021.
I hope that he and Dr. Biden will join us here in Australia for the 70th anniversary of ANZUS.
Vice President Biden last visited in 2016.
Australians are defined by their character, by their grit, their integrity.
Speaking of his deep connection to the Indo-Pacific.
We are all in. We are not going anywhere.
Where two of his uncles served in the Second World War.
So the relationship goes deep and it's personal.
Two former prime ministers welcoming Joe Biden's victory.
It's a relief to have
a return to normal transmission that isn't going to be, making decisions by wild tweets in the early hours of the morning.
Urging Scott Morrison to dramatically pivot on climate policy.
Use this change in Washington to swallow your political pride and get real on the mid-century target of carbon neutrality.
I don't have to go on with all this BS about a gas-led recovery, which is honestly just political piffle.
As Joe Biden signals America's immediate return to the Paris Agreement and net zero emissions by 2050.
We welcome that. Australia never left. Australia was always there.
With the opposition leader warning Australia risks
effectively sitting with Saudi Arabia and some other recalcitrant nations and arguing for less action, not more.
And on Donald Trump's unfounded allegation his election victory has been stolen, this from Australia's ambassador.
The President has the right to contest this in the courts, but we, the UK, New Zealand, Canada, India, France, Germany and others, we're taking the position that the election has been called.
Diplomatically turning the page on a presidency and the America-Australia alliance.
So where to from here? It's hoped that a more nuanced communicator in the Oval Office could perhaps take some of the heat out of the US-China trade relationship, which has had enormous impacts for us here in Australia. Scott Morrison says the door also remains open to the United States to sign up to the TPP. And just finally, Janice, while Donald Trump's two predecessors both visited Australia twice while they were in office, Donald Trump has become the first American president in 3 decades not to visit Australia at all during his time in Washington. Quite extraordinary.
Thank you so much. That's Brett Mason updating us from Parliament House in Canberra. Well, more on the US election coming up next, including the man behind the politics. We'll take a look at the events which helped to shape Joe Biden's life, the triumphs and the tragedies. Also tonight, the Ring of Steel is coming down. Melbourne to reunite with regional Victoria. And lockdown crackdown. Police in Paris ramp up COVID-19 patrols on another record-breaking day in France.
Tonight at 7:30, take on the Aztecs in Rise of Empires, followed by Railways of the Western Front with Chris Tarrant, and later over on NITV, the enthralling Indigenous drama 10 Canoes.
The miracle of birth is tense, funny and life-changing. But how to address the elephant in the womb.
Best come out this week or I'm coming to fetch you.
It's overwhelming.
Oh my gosh.
Best thing ever.
Breathe.
I'm really hard.
Oh, my vagina.
It's great.
It's terrifying.
Oh,
baby. Life and Birth starts tomorrow 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
A lot's changed this year, but thankfully, a few things remain the same, like the backyard, the pool, and the memories we make around it. And your local Pool Works is doing even more to help make yours safer, cleaner, and more enjoyable. With contact-free servicing, home delivery, DIY videos, and our friendly in-store experts. Pool Works. How can we help you be healthy pool people?
Lisa's enjoying great prices on Christmas shopping at Amazon. So come the holidays, she can get her Christmas Lisa on. And everybody loves Christmas Lisa. Get your Christmas on with Amazon.
Superannuation may seem like a faraway thing, but a little change today can help grow your balance for the future. As a fund run only to benefit members, Hester can keep fees down so more money stays in your account. Hester, time to invest in yourself.
Save a massive 20 to 50% off store-wide at Spotlight, including a massive 30% off the entire range of made-to-measure curtains, blinds and shutters. So you can warm it, shade it and keep it cool for less. Sale starts 8 a.m. tomorrow. At Spotlight, it's what you make it.
Merry Christmas, Dad. Here's a little playlist for the long road ahead. Miss you.
There is the possibility of recovery for every patient.
I just want to be free of the chain to the drug.
Emergency services. Is your daughter responding?
I just need something to change. I just need something to shift.
Stopped drinking for 9 weeks, swapped it for this boat.
We're going to win it. We're going to win it together.
Addicted Australia starts Tuesday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
What about breakfast TV?
Like a NAIDOC special Black Brekkie show.
Exactly.
What would we call it?
Big Mob Brekkie starts tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. on NITV and on demand.
COVID-19 travel and hospitality restrictions will be lifted in Victoria tonight as the state records its 9th straight day of no new cases. But mandatory face mask wearing will still apply, with health authorities hailing their effectiveness in curbing the virus spread.
A state at last reunited after months living under a city-country COVID-19 divide.
From 11:59 p.m. tonight, the 25-kilometre travel limit will go. The Melbourne regional Victoria border comes down. Families will be able to be together again.
The so-called Ring of Steel to be lifted as Victoria celebrates another milestone in its coronavirus fight.
It's the first day since early March that there are no active healthcare worker infections.
With just 4 active cases now in the state and no new daily infections again, a raft of restrictions will be eased. Pubs, clubs and restaurants will be able to increase attendance limits, as will faith gatherings and funerals. Gyms and indoor sports centres will also reopen with patron density restrictions. And in 2 weeks' time, there'll be further increases in venue limits, with gatherings of up to 10 allowed at homes. Gyms can increase patron numbers and sporting stadiums will finally be able to reopen at a quarter of their usual crowd capacity.
Cinemas and theatres will go to 100 people grouped in 20s with a density of 1 person per 4 square metres.
But one rule that won't be lifted here yet is the mandatory wearing of face masks in public. Lauding their success, some health experts are now urging New South Wales to follow the example. While that state today reported no new locally acquired infections, it now has far more active cases than Victoria.
It's very important and very likely that COVID-19 will continue to circulate in the community.
The ultimate holy grail in virus protection remains a vaccine. Biotech giant CSL will this week start manufacturing doses of the Oxford University AstraZeneca-developed product, with a view to releasing it in the first half of next year if it gets clinical approval. Gareth Boreham, SBS World News.
And in Europe, Italy has recorded its highest ever single-day tally of new coronavirus cases, nearly 40,000 infections. France has also seen another record daily rise in cases, while several European governments are either starting or continuing strict new measures to reverse the surge in new cases.
At this intensive care ward in northern Lombardy, doctors struggle to treat a new wave of patients. They're worried about admissions increasing tenfold.
Quello che potete vedere è il grafico dei ricoveri nella nostra azienda. Come potete osservare, nell'arco dal 12 ottobre ad oggi sono decuplicati.
As Italy entered its first weekend of new restrictions, the streets of central Rome were once again empty, the capital deemed low risk, but still subject to a nationwide nighttime curfew at 10 p.m. In Paris, police stepped up checks to stop lockdown violators.
We're carrying out operations in addition to the daily checks to monitor if people have their valid permits.
With a record 85,000 new daily cases in France and the total number of deaths topping 40,000 for the first time, French politicians say they're determined the nationwide lockdown, now more than a week old, is respected across the country.
Il est évident désormais que chacun peut être citoyen, que cette période dure le moins longtemps possible si chacun respecte cette période de restriction, parce que le virus il circule quand nous circulons.
Greece, now the latest European country to begin its own new restrictions. Athens too was deserted, with all non-essential shops closed for at least 3 weeks.
I believe people understand the urgency of the moment and will respond to the situation.
And Britain has now imposed a ban on non-UK citizens coming from Denmark due to a new coronavirus strain found in minks in the Scandinavian country. Christine Carney, SBS World News.
Staying in the region, and Britain and Europe have close ties with the US, their leaders joining others in responding to the outcome of the election. Mr Trump has been a particularly polarising figure on the world stage, making the US election of great importance to many of its allies and its rivals.
Joe Biden gewählt ist, wird.
It was an election that had the whole world watching. From the television sets of Germany to the newspapers of India, Joe Biden's triumph is now making headlines across the globe. Some of Europe's most powerful leaders were quick to share their enthusiasm for a Biden victory. British PM Boris Johnson tweeting he looks forward to working together on their shared priorities. Germany's Angela Merkel too wishing Mr Biden good luck and success. President Macron of France saying he was ready to work together.
In fact, I'll get that little piece of dandruff.
President Trump's brash ways had strained historically strong relationships during his tenure.
At least we have something in common, perhaps.
Clashing during key discussions on trade, defence and climate change. There's a hope in Europe that an end to Mr Trump's America First populism will give way to an era of renewed US global leadership.
The world needs a strong relationship between Europe and the US for a revival of transatlantic relations that can meet the challenges that our time presents us.
Though President Trump is yet to acknowledge the result, most world leaders, even apparent allies, are moving on. India's Narendra Modi, Poland's Andrzej Duda and Egypt's Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, whom Mr Trump once dubbed his favourite dictator, among those sending their wishes to the Biden administration. While in New Zealand, its new foreign minister sending a message from one history-making woman to another.
She will bring, I'm sure, some very unique attributes to their leadership.
Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu, who was close to President Trump, congratulated Mr Biden, describing him as a great friend of Israel. In China, where Mr Trump forged perhaps his greatest rivalry, this tweet from the Chinese Communist Party's official newspaper, appearing to mock the president as he clings to power, says it all. Amelia Dunn, SBS World News.
And joining us now from the British capital is SBS reporter Michelle Rimmer. Good evening, Michelle. The news came last night, your time, but what's the feeling like there as Londoners wake up this morning?
Good evening, Janice. Well, US politics is once again front page news here in the UK. The Sunday Telegraph this morning has quoted the new president-elect, "It's time for America to heal," while the Sunday Times have opted for "Sleepy Joe wakes up America." Now, as we've heard, the UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's already congratulated Joe Biden on his election. He said that the US is the UK's most important ally and that he's looking forward to working closely together. Now, as the UK attempts to forge new trade deals in a post-Brexit era, this change in leadership could change the dynamic between a deal between the UK and the US, and even perhaps the UK and Europe, with Joe Biden already warning Boris Johnson against any action that could compromise the Northern Ireland peace agreement. Now, many leaders across Europe, they've taken to Twitter for the most part to offer their congratulations to Joe Biden. We've heard that France's President Emmanuel Macron, he said that he wants to work together on the world's big issues. During his time as president, Donald Trump pulled the US out of some key global agreements, the Paris Climate Agreement and the Iran nuclear deal, which is something that European leaders worked quite hard on to achieve in the first place. There's some hope now that Europe can really re-engage with the US on these key global issues as America's foreign policy approach. It adapts from an America First focus to a more multilateral agenda.
Thank you so much. That's Michelle Rimmer updating us on the reaction from Europe to the Biden-Harris ticket. Well, counting is still underway with a number of swing states yet to be called, but the numbers, according to Associated Press, have Joe Biden with 290 electoral college votes. That's well ahead, of course, of the 270 required, and then we have Donald Trump at 214. Now, Pennsylvania was the state that tipped the result the Democrats' way with a margin of around 41,000 votes. Donald Trump is on track to win North Carolina with its 15 electoral votes, but in nearby Georgia, well, the margin is razor thin. Joe Biden leads by just 9,000 votes with 99% of the ballots counted. But this state is one of at least 3 likely to go to a recount as it lies within the margin of error that forces a recount. And in Arizona, Mr. Trump is closing the gap with Joe Biden. The difference, 19,000 votes. Well, let's go back now to our correspondents in the US. And first to you, Ben. We know that Donald Trump has not conceded yet. So what do we think his next move might be?
Janice, good evening again. He insists that he is still going to challenge the result of this election through the legal system. And we know that in the last few days, several of Team Trump's claims of election fraud have been rejected by judges. There are more cases that will be heard in courts in various states in the coming weeks. But the truth is, no serious Republican election lawyers are actually involved in these efforts. The president's legal team at the moment is being headed by his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Our affiliates at CNN are reporting that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, today went to him and suggested that he needs to start thinking about conceding. But other senior Trump allies say they simply don't think it's in the president's nature for him to be able to admit he was beaten by a man he calls Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, some pretty tough conversations being had there. Let's head now to our correspondent Prue Lewan, once again in New York. Now, Prue, Joe Biden, of course, has a very familiar face, doesn't he, in the US Capitol, but he's been unsuccessful in presidential races before. So what has he done to increase his appeal this time round?
Great question, Janice. In actual fact, it was 12,205 days ago that Joe Biden, declared that he was interested, was bidding for the presidency. 12,000 days ago. And now, after those first 2 unsuccessful tries, he's a winner. What's changed? Well, actually, nothing's changed. He has been dogged and steadfast from the beginning. Of course, he has not been spectacular, and Donald Trump has decided that the best course to attack his competitor, Joe Biden, was to pick on that, as Ben just said, to refer to him as Sleepy Joe, to mock him for being in his so-called basement, as opposed to going and campaigning actively in the country, for wearing a mask that the president said was the biggest mask he had ever seen. Now, interestingly, and this matters because it goes to how Joe Biden will preside over this country, he did not flinch. In fact, when people said that he should be campaigning more in Florida, he stuck to his guns and campaigned in Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania particularly. And of course, that's the state, as you were just saying, that brought victory home. Now, Joe Biden, in terms of what he believes in, is famously a devout Catholic. But really, perhaps Donald Trump should have been thinking in terms of how to deal with this man. He perhaps should have been thinking of the statement of Gandhi, which is, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
Before COVID-19, before civilians wearing masks was a thing, Joe Biden threw his hat in the ring. It was April 2019.
That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
But also in 1987, his first presidential bid, undone by plagiarism. And then a second bid in 2007. Joe Biden's White House dreams only gaining traction when he joined an historic ticket.
Let me say it as simply as I can. Yes, I accept your nomination to run and serve with Barack Obama, the next President of the United States of America.
8 years cheek by jowl with power.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
In the Oval Office and a famously close partnership.
The best vice president America's ever had, Mr. Joe Biden. This also gives the internet one last chance to talk about our bromance.
Tears as President Obama bestowed the nation's highest civilian honour, weeping familiar territory in the Biden household. In 1972, freshly elected to Congress, his young wife and daughter were killed in a car accident while he was in Washington.
One boy was in the back seat on top of his dead sister, and my other boy was on top of his dead mother.
Joe Biden would take his oath of office in his son's hospital room and carry his experience of suffering all the way to this election.
I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes.
His eldest son had died from brain cancer in 2015. Beau Biden, a veteran and emerging politician. Citing the family's grief, Joe Biden ruled out a presidential bid in 2016. And when Republican Senator John McCain was diagnosed with the same brain cancer in 2017, comforting his TV personality daughter.
Your dad took care of my Beau. And Beau talked about your dad's courage, not about illness, but about his courage.
But while Republicans have acknowledged that empathy is Biden's political superpower in 2020, the Democrat notorious for this episode. In 1991, grilling Anita Hill, who had accused then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. The head of the committee, he questioned her in acute detail on live TV.
What was the most embarrassing of all the incidences that you have alleged?
And in this era, after multiple women accused him of having touched them in an inappropriate manner, Biden compelled to address that on social media.
And I get it. I get it. I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility.
Also coming under attack during the primary debates from the senator who would become his running mate, Kamala Harris, chastising him for his prior policy and statements on race.
And it's personal, and it was hurtful.
Joe Biden equally under pressure in the Democratic primaries, coming fourth in Iowa, fifth in New Hampshire. His campaign not resuscitated until victory in South Carolina.
For all of those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign. And we are very much alive.
The 77-year-old who suffered from a childhood stutter becoming his party's choice to take on Donald Trump.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Joe Biden in search of his own truth, fueled by a passion to take his place among American leaders.
That expert analysis, as always, from Prue Luan in New York and Ben Lewis in Washington. And we look forward to speaking with both of you, checking in with you a little later in the bulletin for a final wrap. Well, the incoming Vice President Kamala Harris has, throughout her career, been a trailblazer. The first woman to be Attorney General of California, the first woman of colour on a major presidential ticket. And today, in recognising her breakthrough, she declared that while she may be the first female VP in US history, she won't be the last.
The nation was born with the words, "All men are created equal." It's taken more than 2 centuries for that promise to begin to be realised by a woman. Kamala Harris struggled when she ran to be the Democratic Party's pick for president, but later found a role as the progressive counterweight to Joe Biden's more establishment candidacy.
Joe Biden and I are proud, patriotic Americans who share the values with the vast majority of the American people who want a president of the United States who speaks truth.
She was born in California to immigrant parents of Jamaican and Indian heritage.
There would be a meaningful discussion.
She was elected to the Senate 4 years ago off the back of a successful career as a prosecutor, something that later damaged her support among some liberals who thought she'd been too tough on African American defendants. She graduated from this university, where her elevation to the nation's second highest office is viewed as hugely symbolic.
I have to admit, I'm still in a bit of shock about it. Like, I'm thrilled. I wanted this to happen. I imagine that she's going to take all the things that she learned over her lifetime and put them into policy, which will make her, again, more than a symbol. It'll make her a politician of substance.
Kamala. It's not Kamala. It's not Kamala.
But she still had to teach the country how to say her name.
I'm Kamala Harris.
And she was openly attacked by the president.
I thought she was the meanest, the most horrible, most disrespectful of anybody in the U.S. Senate.
If Kamala Harris had been born more than 100 years ago, she would not have been able to vote. And as a black woman, she would have had no rights. But now she's set to become the most powerful and influential woman in American political history.
Coming up next, what to expect from Australia's first ever all-Indigenous breakfast show. And the Wallabies' first Test victory of 2020, overshadowed by controversial dismissals.
Tonight at 7:30, take on the Aztecs in Rise of Empires, followed by Railways of the Western Front with Chris Tarrant, and later over on NITV, the enthralling Indigenous drama 10 Canoes.
I'd like to be part of sending up our first Indigenous astronaut.
Insight meets Indigenous mentors.
What was it like to be an intern at NASA?
Literally out of this world.
You could be someone who makes an impact, not just a mentor, but a role model.
The power of seeing somebody who has achieved something, it's really critical.
Use mentoring as a tool to achieve those bigger, harder problems that we have to solve.
A special Insight celebrating NAIDOC Week, Thursday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
Bring on getting the shopping done on the first trip. Find everything you need from decorations to gifts and more at your one-stop Christmas shop. Big W, every day's a big day.
Right now, Ford is delivering even more for business with a $1,000 deposit contribution when you take My Ford Finance, reducing your loan by $1,000 right at the get-go. So get to your Ford dealer now. We'll keep you moving.
Where's Bon Bon?
It's got to be somewhere.
No, sorry, mate.
Nothing at the base, over.
New Hilux.
I knew you'd find him.
Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
Bring on the moments you can't wrap and the prezzies you can. Find the perfect gift for everyone on the list with the Gift Spot. Big W, every day's a big day.
If you're looking to buy a property, stop tapping on walls and get a free ANZ Property Profile Report, so you'll know how much a property could sell for. Get on top of property buying with ANZ Buy Ready.
Getting a new fridge home isn't a big deal.
If you get this big deal from Binglee,
spend $700 or more on a selected fridge at Binglee and we'll deliver it, unpack it and take away your old fridge free.
Bring on Christmas. You can shop safely in-store and online with contactless pickup and home delivery. Big W, every day's a big day.
The best dramas are waiting to be uncovered this November on SBS On Demand.
If we don't stop him, he will kill again.
You had your chance. No, it's too late. You're a murderer. I didn't kill anyone.
We recommend he be sentenced to death.
This investigation has to stop. If it continues, I will have to set certain activities in motion.
Uncover the best dramas this month on SBS On Demand.
I have a problem with alcohol.
I really want people to understand that it's not just somebody holding a paper bag on the side of the road.
Addicted Australia starts Tuesday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
Well, Americans in Australia have reacted to the US election outcome with both celebration and concern, as both sides of the political spectrum eagerly watched on despite being thousands of kilometres away.
On the streets of Sydney, joy for the president-elect. Despite their distance, these American Democratic supporters are feeling more patriotic than ever.
I feel so proud of America today.
I just think this is going to be the most wonderful thing that has happened to our country in years.
Across town, more cheers for Joe Biden.
It was like a weight was lifted from my chest.
It's a time to reunite, come together again.
Hanging on every word of the man set to become their leader and their Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Oh, she is amazing, yeah.
And if someone's going to break that ceiling, it's going to be her.
But while there are celebrations here, just like in the US, there are Trump supporters in Australia who aren't going down without a fight.
Whether you support Biden or Trump, I think people should want this to go to the courts for the sake of the American Republic.
An economy in America that starts to get tangled up in green tape, red tape again, which Biden has already said is going to happen, then that has implications for our own economic performance.
But for Biden's backers, it's a moment to raise a glass. Nakari Thorpe, SBS World News.
An Afghan journalist and 2 other civilians have been killed in a car bomb attack in the country's capital, Kabul. Former television presenter Yama Siawash had recently begun working with Afghanistan's central bank and was travelling in a bank vehicle with another employee and the driver. No group has officially claimed responsibility, but officials believe militants linked to the Taliban are to blame. The surge in violence comes as government representatives and the Taliban meet in Qatar in an effort to end decades of conflict. Voters in Myanmar have headed to the polls for their second democratic election since the end of military rule. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy party is heavily favoured to win again, though probably with a reduced majority. While she remains the country's most popular politician, her reputation soured internationally following the Myanmar military's brutal 2017 counter-insurgency campaign against the Rohingya minority. Election results will start being announced from tomorrow. Storm Eta's death toll in Central America has risen following devastating mudslides in Guatemala. Many victims were buried in their homes in a remote village in the Central Mountains, including 22 members of the same family. Overall, it's feared at least 150 people have been killed in Guatemala alone. At least another 60 deaths have been confirmed in other parts of Central America. Well, time for the day in sport now with Michael Tomalaris. And Tomo, the Wallabies did restore some pride, but the Bledisloe finale was mired in a bit of controversy, wasn't it?
It sure was, Janet, but where did that performance come from? We'll never know. But the refereeing stole the headlines. Good evening to you. Commentators and fans have slammed match officials after 2 red cards were issued for accidental high shots in last night's 4th Bledisloe Cup test. The Wallabies sealed a consolation win against the All Blacks, the first under new coach Dave Rennie, turning around their fortunes a week after a record defeat to the same opponents.
The Bledisloe is gone, but the Tri-Nations are alive after Australia's 7th straight test win in Brisbane.
We've been working really hard. We knew we were better than last week, and the great thing, we only had to wait 7 days for redemption.
It was a dream start for debutant winger Tom Wright, crossing with his first touch in the 3rd minute.
What a start, Australia!
New Zealand drawing level soon after, but attacking rugby was far from the heart of the drama in the first half. Referee Nick Berry sensationally issuing 2 red cards. One after a crunching hit on Wright from All Blacks prop Offa Tuangafasi.
Direct contact to the chin of the ball carrier.
A zero-tolerance policy kicking in. Tuangafasi just the 5th All Black to be sent off in a test match. Soon after, an eerily similar offence with a heartbreaking consequence.
It's a red card.
Lachlan Swinton becoming the first Australian debutant to be dismissed.
There's big collisions, and every now and then players are going to get them slightly wrong. And I don't think either of those cards were malicious.
Amid widespread criticism, officials found some unlikely allies.
The law says contact with the head starts at a red card.
We've got to talk about player safety. So that's why the rule's in there, not to make contact with the head.
Berry handed out yellow cards to both sides later in the match. Australia ignoring the frustration and sealing the win. Marika Korobetti snuffing out a last-ditch All Black surge. Joel Spreadborough, SBS World News.
Let's have a look at some cricket now, and heartbreak in the Women's Big Bash with the Hobart Hurricanes falling agonisingly short against Sydney Thunder. After restricting the Thunder to 127 runs, the Hurricanes were led by New Zealander Rachel Priest. The openers unbeaten 83, featuring 9 boundaries and 4 sixes. Needing 3 from the final delivery, the Hurricanes failed by just 1 run. In the Sheffield Shield today, New South Wales slumped to its 3rd lowest ever total on the opening day against Tasmania. The defending champions were 6 for 29 at one stage before being skittled for just 64 runs. Just 3 batsmen passed double figures. Test bowler Mitchell Starc top scoring with 18. English Premier League now, and Manchester United's win over Everton came amid reports a replacement for manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has already been approached. Elsewhere, Crystal Palace and Chelsea secured big wins. Lowly Fulham went down to West Ham, while the 15th placed Red Devils, Manchester United, responded in what was touted as the last chance for Solskjaer. Officials reportedly sounding out former Tottenham manager Mauricio Pochettino before the match. 2 goals from Bruno Fernandes helping ease the pressure, while Fulham could have stolen a valuable draw with a 98th minute spot kick. Ademola Lookman's attempt widely panned as one of the worst the English Premier League has seen, poor guy. To golf now, and Jason Day is firmly in contention to break a 2.5-year title drought just a few days out from the US Masters. The Australian heads into tonight's final round of the Houston Open, 1 stroke behind leader Sam Burns. His run of form coming after making some swing adjustments to protect a chronic back injury. Firing a 3 under 67 in the 3rd round and missing a chance to lead with a double bogey on the final hole. Fellow Australian Adam Scott dropped out of contention with a 7 over 74. And finally tonight, Novak Djokovic has equalled childhood idol Pete Sampras by ending the year as world #1 for a 6th time. Rafael Nadal losing the chance to overtake Djokovic, withdrawing from an ATP Tour event in Bulgaria next week. Nadal's bid for a maiden Paris Masters title ended overnight with a straight sets loss to Alexander Zverev in the semi-finals. There you have it, Janice, all day in sport.
Wonderful. As always, thank you so much, Tomo. Well, tomorrow the nation will wake up to an Australian first, an all-Indigenous breakfast TV show. Big Mob Brekkie kicks off from 7:30 a.m. live on NITV. And hosts Ryan Little and Shani Wellington are with us now. A very good evening to both of you. It looks amazing behind you, I've got to say, and I know the excitement's building there. So what have you got in store for us?
Thank you for that plug there, Janice. Yeah, we are very excited to be part of the first ever all-Indigenous breakfast television show, Big Mob Brekkie. And like you mentioned, if you do wake up with us early tomorrow, you won't be disappointed based on this backdrop behind us. We're going to be coming live from 7:30 from Taronga Zoo, which is on the beautiful Eora Nation. And we're going to be joined by a bunch of very special guests throughout the week. Tomorrow we will have singer-songwriter Emma Donovan and also Ryan Clapman, who's a very deadly hip-hop artist. And look, you're going to get everything you want in a breakfast show, just bigger and blacker. Isn't that right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's right, Shani. It'll be absolutely exciting. So make sure you set your alarm for 7:30 in the morning so you can join us. We'll be crossing to all of our First Nations media partners around the country. We'll have all the latest news, current affairs, sports and weather, as well as, well, what else is breakfast TV without a bit of cooking, eh? So make sure you join us for our cooking segment with our very own Steve Mungandai Ellis. Make sure you tune in.
See you then. Cannot wait. That is Big Mob Brekkie, 7:30 a.m. on NITV. Don't miss it. Well, coming up, the weather details, and we recap the big day in US politics as Joe Biden is declared victorious in the election.
This is the closest point between the United States and Russia, and for decades, it's separated families.
I don't know very much about them.
On Dateline, finally, these Native Americans will reunite with their Russian relatives.
We are so similar in the things we do.
Then, on The Feed, the push to protect more of Australia's natural wonders.
News of crime and all over this sacred Aboriginal site.
That's Tuesday on SBS and On Demand.
What other gift could help you connect with family, past and present? Discover where you originated from, the communities that shaped you, your great-great-grandparents, and the journeys they took that ultimately led to you. Give the gift of family connection this Christmas with Ancestry DNA. Order your kit today at ancestry.com.au.
So it's between that one and this one.
Make the choice easy. Get a 3.9% comparison rate across the Corolla hatch and sedan range. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
Today's Australia has been shaped by migration. Celebrate our diverse migrant heritage and add your family's name to the welcome wall at the Australian National Maritime Museum. Register now to be part of the next unveiling. For full details, visit the website.
Check out Catch, where everyday Aussies save big on Christmas gifts. Like LeBron's Games, Delta's Wood Drum, Salva's Kayak and Jude's Saw. For thousands of Christmas bargains, everyday Aussies, check out Catch.
I've been thinking, change it up. No, stay the course. It's all about managing cash flow. Or is it investing, diversifying? Wait, why did I even get into this?
Andy, let's work through this one step at a time.
If you need help working out your next step, search ANZ Business.
It's time to reboot 2020. To hit the road. Swap your indoors for the great outdoors. Love caravan and camping? Love New South Wales.
World Movies are sharing stories that hold a mirror up to the world and ask, do you like what you see?
What am I fighting for? This is your country.
Man, y'all see a black man in court and assume I'm the one on trial.
They locked me up. They decided I'm a liar.
You think the law's going to protect you?
We gotta go now.
I don't want to lose my son again.
The Black Lives Matter collection continues tonight 9:30 on SBS World Movies and on demand.
Time to check the weather details, and troughs are generating isolated thunderstorms in eastern Western Australia and western South Australia. Cool onshore winds are bringing a few coastal showers to eastern Queensland and north-eastern New South Wales. In the major centres, Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra and Sydney will all be partly cloudy. Sunny skies ahead for Hobart and Melbourne. Showers and a possible storm in Perth and Darwin. Further afield, a few showers ahead for Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Some rain in Samoa and Tahiti and thunder to Rothrunandi. To Southeast Asia, partly cloudy skies in Bangkok and Jakarta. It'll be grey in Phnom Penh and Denpasar, thunder in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Further north, fine and bright in Beijing, Hanoi, Seoul and Tokyo, partly cloudy skies in Hong Kong and some rain ahead in Manila, drizzle in Taipei. Let's head west. Showers in Baghdad, partly cloudy in Islamabad, Jerusalem and Tehran, and rain to hit Beirut as well. To Europe now, fine and sunny in Athens and Warsaw. Cloud about Belgrade, partly cloudy in Berlin, Istanbul and Rome, and a few showers to soak Paris and Stockholm. In Africa, it'll be fine weather ahead for Casablanca and Dakar, showers in Cairo and Johannesburg, and a few showers in Nairobi, partly cloudy skies in Addis Ababa and Lagos. To South America, thunder to roar through Asunción and Rio, some rain in Bogotá, cloudy in Buenos Aires, showers in Caracas and La Paz. And for North America, fine and bright in New York, Chicago and Dallas. The sun will shine in Toronto and Vancouver and a few showers in Denver, partly cloudy skies in Washington DC and Mexico City. Well, legendary entertainer Jeannie Little has died aged 82. Known for her daring fashion, vivacious personality and, of course, the iconic "Hello, darlings" catchphrase, she entertained millions over 4 decades. In 1976, she won the Gold Logie for Most Popular Television Personality. Her death comes following a long battle with Alzheimer's disease, which she was diagnosed with in 2009. And another Australian talented artist is also being farewelled. Midnight Oil bassist Bones Hillman has died from cancer at the age of 62. On Facebook, the band paid tribute to their musical comrade's beautiful voice and wicked sense of humour. Well, Democrats continue to party, of course, across the US, but there have also been scenes of celebration in India too, in the ancestral village of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Her late mother was born in India and moved to the US at the age of 19 to study at the University of California. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has described Harris's success as path-breaking and a matter of immense pride, not just for her relatives, but also for all Indian Americans. Well, let's go back to the United States now and to our chief international correspondent, Ben Lewis, who joins us once again from Washington, DC. Ben, hello once again. This has been a momentous night there.
Yeah, Janice, momentous indeed. The most common thing we heard from Biden supporters at his victory speech tonight was that they felt they can finally breathe again after 4 years of feeling tense all the time. Joe Biden has wanted to be president for decades now, but he'll be taking office at an incredibly difficult time for the United States. The country is in the grip of the COVID-19 pandemic. 120,000 new cases a day. The death toll has passed 238,000. This is a grieving nation, and Joe Biden is a man who knows and understands grief. In a few hours' time, he will get up, as he does every Sunday morning, and go to the church where 2 of his children are buried. Then he'll get to work. His first task, establishing a coronavirus working group. They will be ready for his first day in office to try and get this crisis under control.
Thanks once again, our correspondent Ben Lewis joining us from Washington, DC on a huge day in the US. And that is where we leave you this Sunday, our coverage of the US election, including all the digital platforms. And I'll have news updates throughout the evening here on SBS from the World News team. Good night.